Welcome into a special edition of the Patriot Broadcasting Project. I'm your host, Bubba Startz. With me today, Tyler Calkins-Stoeser and Aaron Prince. Tyler is a longtime, multi-generational South Dakota rancher, and he's got a hell of a story to tell. So, Tyler, Aaron, welcome to the show.
How's it going, Bubba? Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys coming on, taking a little bit of time for me today. We had Shad Sullivan on recently, and it's taken me down the road of property rights, especially in South Dakota. Our friends, the Maud family, have been recently vindicated, but it drew us closer together again, Tyler, to kind of talk about your situation and something that has plagued your family for several years now. So I want you to go ahead, introduce yourself and talk about the history of the land first, and then we'll kind of pick up where the troubles began and where it is now.
So yeah, Tyler Stoeser / Calkins. I'm the last Calkins of my family. Our family goes back all the way to the homesteading days. They helped homestead that location and area, Stanley Jones County, and been there ever since. I guess my grandfather, he got sick on us in 2022, and mid-August. He passed away September 8th. Congestive heart failure, kidney, liver failure. Just so happened to be it was probably about a month after he got the damn COVID shot, so it makes the guy wonder about that. But yeah, when he passed on us, first when I got to at the hospital, the first time I ever met my grandfather's banker, it was at the hospital. I'll never forget it. It's the last time I was ever scolded by my grandfather. That banker, I inadvertently let him know that my grandfather's dying, talking with my grandfather's land broker, and I didn't think it was nothing serious. It kind of obvious he was going to pass on us. And that banker, he walked back in the ICU room, and I walked in there after that. He come out. He's like, "Oh, we'll be seeing you around, I'm sure." And I said, "Well, nice to meet you." And yeah, I'm sure we'll see you around. And I walked back in the ICU room, and my grandfather's first words, "Don't be telling that man my personal business." Well, I scolded, I was, "Oh, geez, what did I do?" One of them, you don't say no more, you did something wrong, and you just don't talk about it. It's like, oh, geez. And later, that same banker ended up becoming the executor of my grandfather's estate, and it didn't make no goddamn sense to us because that would be the person you'd want to know you're dying, especially if he was going to be handling your affairs. Well, that banker, he was cold to the family, and they didn't bother looking at the partnership agreement. And there's a lot of favoritisms to the one hired man. And, just the way the hired men were cold to the family. It was like we were nothing to nobodies. My grandfather, he was a very, very private man. He didn't talk to other people about his family because it wasn't none of their business. Might be part of the reason why they didn't have my sister involved in anything, because they didn't even know she was my sister. Well, they broke the ranch up through court proceedings, and they threatened charges on the family, me and my mom, for taking the family Bible with us, and rodeo buckle, and partnership agreements. And they stole the partnership agreements from the ranch house. And it's like, well, that partnership agreement was set up to protect and preserve the family land for future generations at a minimum of 100 years. Well, you don't put something together like that just to have it destroyed within 2 years of you making it. You just wouldn't do that. I had a bedroom at my Gramps, and that was my mom's childhood home. She grew up there, and I spent all my free time there growing up. And my grandfather showed me the ways on the place, and just to be treated like that is It's something else. My he never said to me not once, kid, you better pack up your bedroom. You're not going to be able to come back after I die. Even in his fraudulent will that was proven altered by that banker, making the family question what was in it at all, because pages 1 and 2, the ranch's entirety didn't even have my grandfather's signature initial on it. Just blank computer paper. They held it for 5 weeks after burial, so 7 weeks in total. And the only reason why they even let it go is because my mom got an attorney and had an attorney get a hold of him. Well, the hell of a deal that happened after that, wills were planted in the ranch house after we searched the place top to bottom. We were threatened with charges. My grandfather would have been so dang mad to know that his attorney, well, I don't even know if it was his active attorney or not, just the guy that put these things together, would treat his family like that,
Tyler, just for the record and to kind of get it out there, how much land are we talking about on this ranch?
Well, depends on if you're talking government ground with it or just the
personal property.
Close to 10,000 acres.
So a good chunk of land. Something
that's massive.
Yeah.
Chunk of land, a lot of money. And that's ultimately what it comes down to here. And Aaron, I kind of want.
And that's the saddest thing too, is it's not money for us.
No, obviously. Generations have been spent not just working this land, but getting worked by the land, I'm sure, as well. We all know, especially as South Dakotans, how hot the summers can be and how cold the winters can be, and getting all of it in between that. To have that chunk of land in your family since the homesteading days, well over 100 years, and to have the sweat and blood, and I'm sure family members are definitely family pets buried on that land, that all means something. It may not mean something to some banker. It may not mean something to an attorney in his office behind his desk, but it means something to the man with his feet firmly planted in the dirt. And Aaron, I kind of want you to jump in here, and now we're starting to get into the legal, proceedings that had happened. And Tyler, we're going to come back to you as this progresses. But Aaron, can you kind of describe from the time that, Grandpa passes to this, 7 weeks after, what is it that happened in this time frame?
Well, basically, you have confused public servants that don't know the jurisdictions. You segued with on the land. Well, law stands for land, air, and water. Okay. They've shanghaied most Americans into the water, right? Law of the land, the supreme law of the land, 6.3 of the Constitution, or 6.2 of the Constitution. So most people don't know, they haven't been educated. It's been, subversion within. They haven't really understood how that actually necessarily goes. So when you're saying you're going into the courts, they're operating on a commercial capacity. So if you go back into the laws, they don't even realize what they're doing. So it's all incentivized. So QSIP, CAFR codes, whatever different securities that are issued. So most of these probate, any court case, doesn't matter where it is, all across the United States. What they're doing is profiting. They're privateers behind your back, and it's undisclosed securities that are being issued. Now, legal is not lawful, right? Legal is a condition of contract. So you have to question, well, what contract did I legally sign that made me the surety or obligated to these responsibilities? So when you're looking at the seed and estate, these different estates, like the Calkins or the Stoeser estates, you're the decedent, right? So then they're looking at the next party, the power attorney or the executor, and they're looking at the capacity and roles that they're operating. But because you have been converted into a franchise, an entity yourself to the 14th Amendment, and if under canon law, there's the law of presumptions. There's 12 presumptions of the law, and these guys assume everything, and they're not really very bright. I mean, I feel sorry for anybody who's paid for law school in the last 20 years because they really weren't taught the law. They were taught how to get a few bag of tricks to manipulate the steel and twist things. And it just becomes, when you have a first class citizen, right, which basically a bar attorney or a bar has become a first class citizen, and they've infiltrated all segments of government, the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. So where is the separations of power? You can go back on, we can talk about history and all this stuff, but literally people are not operating in the powers that were meant to be. So when the creation gets out of line from the creator, it's time to put that back in the line, and they're not servicing. They had two responsibilities as an organization, and that's to protect your property and protect your rights. And they have miserably failed. It's disgusting what's gone on in this case. I'm appalled, but it is a perfect case to prove what's going on throughout the United States. And I mean, sure, these people, these attorneys, are what they've done, these legal liars, I don't even know what else to call them, because most of them have dishonesty insurance too as well, right? And as soon as you remember corpus juris secundum, volume 7, section 4, attorneys have loyalty to the court before they have to the client. So if most people knew that, and as soon as you have a representation, well, you're a man, you're here, you're physically there. What are you representing? Well, representing is an entity, it's a dead thing. So when they say they're representing the man, you've already been converted under presumption, and you don't have your unalienable standing rights as a man or woman. So everybody's lost in how they're operating capacity. It's ignorance or sheer just evil.
Corruption, my mom's first attorney that discovered the altering of the will. After that first hearing, she got pulled out to the side by the guy that made these programs. He put the partnership together, my grandfather's supposed will. And the very next thing, my mom's attorney quit fighting for her. Went from discovering an altering of a will on a multi-million-dollar cattle ranch to, oh, well, you're getting your money, Barb. I don't know what else you want me to do for you. And you could see it in the transcripts, and then this nobody attorney then goes from being a nobody attorney to a state's attorney in that same county that my mom died. There's a conflict of interest even between Cassie Hunt, Stephanie Trask, and Doug Abrams. All being in the same rooms. That Doug Abrams, my grandfather's attorney, then this thing just keeps following me. When my mom died, Stephanie Trask, she pointed me to another law firm, and that other law firm, right after I gave him $20,000 to defend me against my mom's ex suing me because he decided to sue me while I was already got 2 legal battles going on trying to defend the ranch. Doug Abrams was in his law firm, I find out, just a couple days before I give him $20,000. And then this guy, he doesn't fight for me for nothing, and ends up even letting my mom's cattle getting stolen and didn't do nothing. It's like, then to find and put these puzzle pieces together, and it's like every step I take, I'm in their circle. Same people. There's wills planted in the house. My mom had, and this is after me, my mom, and my sister, top to bottom, no stone unturned. That's how I found the partnership agreement. The partnership agreements were in a spot that only a family member would find them. They weren't even in his safe. His safe was open after we come back from Sioux Falls. There's people at the ranch house that we don't even know who or what they were doing, But when we come back from Sioux Falls, his safe's open. They didn't even expect him to be coming back from Sioux Falls. But I would be damned if I let my grandfather die in some hospital in a strange place, not knowing where he was when he could go at peace at home and on the ranch,
So before your grandfather was even officially deceased, there was people that were making plays for this.
Absolutely.
doing absolutely illegal things. I mean, we're not talking about like a behind closed doors corruption, although there is plenty of that going on. It would definitely seem relationships and deals happening. All of a sudden, a guy getting a state's attorney job.
Oh, the will, one of the will, the first will that was planted at the house, Mama had the Stanley County Sheriff's Department come out and get it. And my mom said, "You run that thing for prints, and it'll tell you exactly who put that there," because my dad never touched that damn thing. You know, it was put in the nightstand that was right beside his bed. That was the first place it looked, you know, and it was sitting on the top, brand new vanilla envelope. If you know a rancher, you touch a damn envelope and it's smudged and it's got bent corners and it gets thrown in the pickup for a little while, you know. This thing had a United States postal stamp on it, but it was never stamped to go through the postal service. So they tried to make it look like it was mailed, but it wasn't even ever mailed. Well, then that sheriff's department, Stanley County, I ain't scared to say their name, they turned around, instead of running that thing for prints and doing their job, they turned around and gave it back to Lenny Startz, that banker with Farm Credit Services.
So they were evidence to a potential perpetrator.
Yeah.
Activity. I mean, that sounds insane. That sounds
it goes deep. There's a lot of circumstances
you
like
can't
that.
You can't even make this shit up if you tried.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's so disgusting.
Well, and it sounds like you have no choice. I mean, obviously trying to fight it in the county.
70 different law firms called.
As small as
nobody would touch it.
Right.
Because the May Adams law firm.
Well, May Adams also, most people don't realize May Adams law firm is involved with the Capitol with helping write all the legislative.
They scare every attorney that fucking they'd hear our story. Oh yeah, that's illegal. This is illegal. This is illegal. We learned how to even approach talking to them, because as soon as you tell them who the players are, oh, we're not a big enough law firm, or if it's conflict of interest or out of state people, oh, they're lobbyists. That's a really old law firm, and yeah, we're gonna need at least 100,000 to even think about representing you. And it's like, and that's out of staters. Nobody in state would even touch it
because they have some sort.
They have a monopoly. There's only so many big estate attorneys in the state of South Dakota, and they have them all in their pocket.
Right. Yeah. So what we're uncovering here is a deeply seated corruption that has been going on for probably
as long. The more you look, the worse it gets.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, actually, we actually have what's one part of our case is the antitrust Sherman Act, because of how they've operated towards them. It's basically been legal warfare and monopoly control. There's no honor, there's no justice. It's a facade, the whole thing. And we're talking about trust law. He has an FLP, which essentially is a clear declaration to the state that you operate under common law and you have your private law. So the courts, which is superior law, and it's the highest precedence. The courts completely ignored all that because the business partnership agreement completely conflicts with the will, and you can tell based on the stories and everything else. But ideally, or institutionally, or structurally, or lawfully, or however you want to say it, the highest part was his registered business agreement,
Calkins Legacy Land.
The Calkins Legacy Land. It was basically ignored by the courts, which is
they were supposed to be defending it and upholding it. That's the whole reason for certifying your partnership agreements with the state. You know, and I've even reached out to Marty Jackley, that's the Attorney General. I reached out to the Mahar families. That's Tom Mahar Sr., Jr., and now Anna Mahar, all state's attorneys. Imagine that. Too many families if I can controlling the power. There's a reason for it. You know, yeah, it's sick. It's just sick.
And what is the end goal, I guess, for the courts and the defending of this? I mean, who stands to benefit from this ultimately?
So the Farm Credit Services, there was my dad's got a divorce from his second wife, basically because my grandmother, it's It's a love story, high school sweethearts, that never quit seeing each other. He had a $900,000 loan left on that $2 million divorce. Farm Credit Services, the banker, he retired just to become the executor. Slap in the face conflict of interest. Well, the partnership agreement, he went completely against it. Instead of protecting it, preserving it, and maintaining it for future generations like it's supposed to be, he affiliated the disruption of it and breaking it up, prioritizing the bank. He paid back Farm Credit Services $900,000, right, through the sale of cattle and whatnot, and then turned around and financed a big chunk of the land to one of the hired hands, putting the land that's been paid for years and years and years back in the bank's pocket for $3 million at a high interest rate loan over the next 30, 40 years. That they just wrapped him in a really dangerous spot by giving the bank control over the ranch.
Yeah, I got it. So how does because there was no executor named in your grandpa's will, that just
no, that's what they're trying to say. This fraudulent will named the banker.
Okay, now things
are the same guy my grand said, don't be telling that man my personal business, is the last time I was ever scolded. It's like, wait, and now this guy's controlling everything. He's being cold to the family, threatening us with legal charges for stealing our How do you steal your family's own Bible? Our family Bible goes back to 1873.
It's a beautiful piece of art.
Yeah, Aaron, in your opinion, is levying these, misdemeanor charges for the stealing of property, for the Bible and things like that,
are felony charges?
No, yeah, these are looking at like the list that we put together. We're parallel doing civil and criminal.
Just an altering of a will in any way, shape, or form is a class 5 felony, I do believe.
That's a legal document, but I guess I was saying in them, like, they're trying to levy these felony charges against you.
Those are just misdemeanor charges, I believe. I don't know. It was a scare tactic.
Right. Okay. To get you to
coercion, extortion.
Like
it's typical piracy.
If you would have known my gramps, if he would have caught when the people that were supposed to be taking care of him and his family or threatening his family legal charges, they'd been gone quicker than you could have blinked.
Well, your grandpa was from a different generation where they
he had a lot of land. He could bury them pretty quick. He wouldn't put up with it. No one should.
There's been criminal activity attached to this on the part of the executive. It would appear to me, I guess, but without the cooperation of the law.
And we've been screaming. Mom's trying to get him to look at the partnership. Hey, look at the partnership. They said they're going to read it. You can see it in the court transcripts. They acknowledge it, but then they dance around it. They never want it to be focused on. The judge looked at it outside of the court, didn't even bother getting back to me or my mom with her decision. And then here, my second cousin, met her once in my life. She lived down in Florida. My grandfather damn near went bankrupt keeping that ranch together when his dad died. My great-grandfather buying his sisters out. He even had to pay the back taxes. Geez, he was mad at his sisters. Somehow this second cousin got put back onto it. And it's like, well, lineal descendants only. Well, you're not a lineal descendant. You're a cousin, yeah, we're in the same tree, but you're not lineal. Very first thing she does is go to partition the land. Never even once wanted to talk about trying to preserve and move forward and keep it safe. No, first conversation is she wanted to break it up. Oh, well, I don't think we'll ever be able to come to decisions together on things. It's like, what decisions? You want to pick the color of the fence post? By all means, go ahead. Like, This is you're just picking up the football and continuing the run. They already did the blueprints and the plans and how you operate because they did it for over 100 years. They know what they're doing.
She didn't have any legal standing to do this anyway, right? So she got a call from a lawyer that's like, hey, you stand to make a bunch of money. Come do this and this. And
No. She got supposedly named in this bullshit fraudulent will.
right.
Her name comes before mine, which doesn't make any sense because that's just
Comes before his own daughter too.
You wouldn't put a grandniece before a grandson. It's just etiquette. The name doesn't fit there.
Or the daughter. Like
And then but that cousin, not only does her name shouldn't fit there, but the partnership agreement says she shouldn't be there because she's not a lineal descendant, a rightful heir of the land.
so in their attempt, and we don't have forever to talk about this, although we
But
could.
so
Yeah.
with that cousin, when she's trying to break that land up, I try to give them the partnership agreement again, and they just said they rejected it.
Well, they missed the partnership agreement. From what I'm
Oh no, they avoided it like the plague.
Well, can I fill you in on why? Is because it's common law. It's not their jurisdiction. The courts are operating under Article 1 courts, what are for entities and corporations. They're acting in administrative capacity, not judicial capacity. And that's why they circumvent that thing like the plague, because they're representing, they're not presenting, they're not operating in the right capacities. And most people don't understand that. And they don't even understand that, but some of the judges do, some of the judges don't. That history and knowledge is being lost, and that's why I say the last 20 years of a law school, not too many people catch on to what's actually going on, and it's really bad.
Crooks teaching other crooks how to be crooks is what law
Yes,
has become.
exactly.
And then they run into somebody like me that, I mean, that ranch is everything to my family. It's something that's just it's bred into you, you know. I'll fight tooth and nail for that place, and it's sad that nobody else is trying to preserve what my grandfather's true intentions were, is to protect the Calkins legacy for the next 100 years or better. You know, in the partnership agreement, he says 100 years in there, 2119. But on what he filed with the state, he crossed out the date and wrote perpetual. Well, you know what perpetual means? Ongoing forever. He was trying to do what he could to protect and preserve the family's ranch for well past my own lifetime. So for it to end within 3 years of its creation is kind of questionable at best.
At best, but that's not going to happen because of the grit and determination that you are showing, and thanks to Aaron with his knowledge, obviously coming into
they got me staying in the cabin shack out there. I don't got running water to it. Thankfully, I got power, so I got heat and I got a fridge out there. So it's not the end of the world. Most people wouldn't do it, but when you love something, you love something. It don't matter. You know, they stripped all the equipment, set us up for failure over there. They didn't want us to succeed, but you know, me and mom, our determination, we put our resources together and scrounged up every little piece of equipment we could do and get by with. And good thing I had some good horses because I didn't even have a four-wheeler out there. You know, they took every damn thing. And just cold. Just cold. I even was so generous to offer the hired hand. I said, you know, I'd be your hired hand like you were for my Gramps, you know, and who better to be your hired hand? I know you need another person out here because Gramps is gone, you know. I already got a bedroom. I know the land. I know the operation. He just turned his back, you know. And it's like, that's something else to be so cold. And leave me and mom over at Great Gramps with no equipment, no, you know, mom is staying in the camper, I was staying in the little camp cabin, and thank God there was some good neighbors, you know.
well, and that's all you really have are your neighbors at this point, and you're lucky that most of them aren't trying to slit
you know,
these
I
people.
think a lot of them are scared too because there's a lot of them that ain't saying too much. But
Oh, I bet they're taking care of their own legal documentation right now, seeing what's happening.
if you have it, you probably should and make sure you do a good job because there's a lot of crooked people out there that take advantage of your family when you're gone.
Aaron, I'd love for you to touch on before I let you guys go. I mean, because so much has been done since this.
Oh, there's so
I mean,
much.
to the bank. I mean, the bank lent this hired hand $3 million and financed this land. What happened in that regard? Should all of this come to be built off of a fraudulent document? I mean,
it goes worse than that. And it goes a lot deeper that people don't really understand. There hasn't been any money for a long time. Everything's debit and credit. Okay. The Farm Credit Services is a government agency. So how does a government agency have this much authority? And when did the government get involved in banking? Okay. So there's a very deep story there. We don't have time to get involved with all that, but basically you have to understand all the physical assets, right? There's substance and then there's non-substance, there's fiction, right? There's substance physically there, gold, silver, coin, you know what I mean? Something with physical asset. And then there's nothing. And it goes really deep and it's a long story. And I don't, that's a whole rabbit trail that could be a big conversation in itself.
You know, it's very interesting. We started talking about history, right? My great grandfather had a big influence in that community. He was a banker. And him and his banking buddies back in 74, 73.
They had a letter in 30 that was a good one, or 19. I don't know. I don't know exact date.
Long time ago. They were writing back and forth to their board members. They were concerned about the bankers not being active in the ranching farming community and just
controlling
college students. You know, they were worried that they would end up getting too much power in the banks long before this ended up happening. And then to come across them letters that my family saved and hanged on to, and I'm reading through this shit, and I was like, hell, they were worried about this 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, you know, and here to see that unfolding right in front of your eyes, you're like, this is the very thing that they were worried about happening. The banks losing connection to the actual farmer rancher and losing their heart.
Does this feel like your destiny? Does it feel like your whole family's history has been building to this moment? Because, I mean, being able to go back and trace that history, do you feel that it has to be you? And because of the time that we're in where, you know, there's a lot more information available to these farmers and ranchers now than there ever has been with the internet, with, you know, resources like
Thank God too, because we wouldn't have had a chance. Yeah.
Well, another thing I want to let South Dakota people know is that your titles, okay, they've converted everything to digital. So your physical title, there's a chain of title in your you know, deeds and titles. What they've done is they digitize them, and people can do these quick deeds or quiet titles, and these guys are doing it behind people's back. And because everything has to be in wet ink signature, what they're actually doing to people is converting them digitally, and someone's doing a quick deed and not even notifying the owners, and people are taking control of property behind their back. That's another part of this aspect that we didn't get into, but to protect people in South Dakota, to be aware that the courts, these registries are conducting this. We just noticed it within $1 just checking his thing, but because it's digital, it loses the chain of title of the actual physical item. So it's become a substance thing to a virtual thing because, you know, there's that's a whole rabbit hole too that I could explain, but
that sounds like with the fell swoop of a few keyboard strokes, they could steal all the land and all the property.
Absolutely.
And who's to say anything otherwise because it's all digital.
And they're supposedly the ones with the authority. Meanwhile, you have the physical deed and title in your hand, and you were sleeping in your bed, and you had no idea that they're physically they were taking the property around you. And I'm sure that's rampant throughout, you know.
So to answer on that question you asked me if I thought that this was my destiny, I never thought in a million years that I would be in this spot, in this predicament. And it's not my destiny, but it is my duty. I'm the last Calkins, and if I don't do nothing now, there ain't nobody else to do anything. Mom was the other fighter of the family, and it's even questionable how she read.
She wasn't set up. She went in, she thought people were honorable because she had a service and a history and did she not expect her to be sideswiped in the courts and these people to act the way they did. So it kind of threw her. You can see her history of notes and her thought process, and it's inexcusable to treat anybody in that nature.
If it wasn't for my mom's background too, she wouldn't have, your normal person wouldn't have questioned or caught on. My mom was a Sergeant 6 class Special Forces classified unit, highly decorated. And then on top of that, she Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Elks, those, everything you could think of. My mom was very active. But then on top of that, she got her master's in accounting. So she was able to see things that a normal person probably wouldn't even have noticed, or she was sharp enough to the books and the cattle count, and it's like, no, things are off, everything's off, and then she's able to, thank God she was too, because she left
great notes
and evidence and work, and thankfully she took a lot of notes.
Where are we at in the process of the legal proceedings at this moment?
Well, we just got the summons out in federal court. The Hocking County courts, they're still dicking around with trying to facilitate basically the reason why my mom's dead, because she was going to go pick up a protection restraining order against her ex. It's systematic. It really feels systematic, like I'm purposely getting attacked.
We're in a good position. We're just getting organized. There's a lot of information to get organized, because you remember we've got claims against the unified judiciary. We have the state bar, the attorney general's office. So we're attacking those specific ones as entities and holding the principals accountable for their organization's operations. Given that they're guilds, like for instance, the Bard, it's private, it's not public, and how they have this influence on the American people is good. I don't know where you guys took off for lunch somewhere a long time ago and never came back. So basically what we're doing is we've got a bunch of these cases. I've got a commercial lien against them. And basically we're taking everybody, the principals, keep holding them accountable. I don't want to be doing this, but they need to realize what they're doing, and enough stops. People are being affected. People are being harmed. Look at the whole COVID thing, no repercussions. That's because we have people that are ignorant and manipulative and non-concerned and have no morals. They're ethically broke. And these are the people that are conducting our courts just for their own profit, and they're harming everybody. There should have been some outfall from a lot of things that have happened in the last 10 years, and it's all quiet because not my jurisdiction. No one wants to hold responsibility. Everybody's acting in a fiction and not actually being grounded and starting with the basics, with the fundamentals. You cannot build any foundational on quicksand, and they're so far down that rabbit hole of there's no way out, because you can prove it with congressional records, you can prove it with contracts. I mean, they're literally, it's like a wake-up call for a lot of them, and we're going to put a stop to it.
And I'm so very thankful for my other line of work, how me and you got to know each other. Because if it wasn't for that, I have a big outreach. You know that you have a big outreach too. And if it wasn't for that, there would have been no hope. You know, reaching out, and I'm so thankful that Aaron come to our aid because it was looking really bad.
Well, and it can be extremely isolating, which is exactly what they want to do. They want to make
Oh,
you feel
absolutely.
like everyone is against you and to levy charges and to threaten you and coerce you
Financially and
Divide and conquer.
in every way. Exactly. And I commend you for continuing to fight, for continuing to stand up to this corrupt system that has been
somebody's
operating
got to.
for so long. And now that we have entered this age of accountability, the light getting shown on it, right, is causing it to act like a scared, cornered animal. And I think they overplayed their hand in this case. It sure seems like they tried to pull some moves that maybe would have worked and did work in the 70s and 80s, but no longer in this time where guys like me and you, Tyler, have that outreach and we reach a massive audience with what we do. It's exactly why we got together today. It's exactly why we'll be catching up with you again in the near future as things continue to unfold, to keep a light on this and to keep some public pressure on these entities as they continue to operate in this way across the state of South Dakota, and around the country, I'm sure. This is not the end of the story, but merely an introduction. So, Tyler, Aaron, I appreciate you being on the program today. We're going to keep in touch. What can we do as the public to continue to help you all?
Man, it's
Start looking into things. Start understanding what's going on. Start, making a voice. Start having discussions. Don't be afraid of discussions. People need to start talking about many different subjects, and you've been indoctrinated to avoid conversations.
so have them conversations. Share it if you want. Don't share it if you don't want to. But the more people that this reaches, and it'll help other people. This isn't just something this pertains to all South Dakotans. You let them take away stuff here, they just keep growing, and nobody ever does anything. And it's going to be worse for the next generations if we don't do something now. It's already been out of hand.
Indeed. Well, guys, I really appreciate you jumping on with me today, sharing a little bit of this story. I know it's a massive thing to
Oh,
try and tackle,
There's
and
so
especially to
much.
squeeze it into a 45-minute conversation is pretty difficult. But that's exactly why we're going to get back together. We're going to keep having conversations here that can be shared out with our fan bases out there and into the general public. People need to know, and if it's our job to educate them, then so be it. That's exactly what we're going to do. Tyler, Aaron, thanks for being on the Patriot Broadcasting Project today, and we look forward to speaking with you again real soon.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much.